Macabre, gruesome and horrifying, ghastly. Of, pertaining to, dealing with, or representing death, especially its grimmer or uglier aspect. Of, or suggestive of, the allegorical dance of death. Prepare yourself for these macabre moments.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, Marie.
And welcome, everybody, to the second episode of Macabre Moments.
Our first episode of 2020. Happy New Year, Marie.
Yes, and Happy New Year to all of our listeners out there as well. I wanted to let everybody know that I am suffering from a little bit of a cold, and I'm having these coughing fits. So if I start coughing, I might just have to mute my mic, and I apologize for that. But we have a really special guest for tonight's show, and I didn't want to reschedule. So I'm going to suffer through this, so we're able to interview our guest. He is currently on a show that's on the Travel Channel. It's called Ghost Loop. I don't know if any of you have seen it. If you haven't, I recommend that you check it out. It's very interesting. It's a new a take on investigations and how they approach the investigation.
Basically, it's a recurring haunting. They are... His name is Sean Austin. Did we say his name?
I was getting to it, but it's okay.
Sean Austin. Not the Sean Austin from the Goonies or Lord of the Rings.
No.
Different Sean Austin.
Yes, and he's one of the investigators that's part of this television show, Ghost Loop. And it's very, like Corey was saying, it's it's almost like a residual haunt, where it's a reoccurring thing that happens on a regular basis, and they go in, try to decipher what's really going down, get down to the nitty gritty, and then their approach on how they deal with these entities is also very interesting and something that you don't typically see on a ghost hunting show. So I'm really excited to talk to Sean about this. But not only is he an investigator for the show Ghost Loop, he is also an author and a musician. Mm-hmm. So we'll be talking to him about that as well.
Lovely voice.
So let's welcome to the show Mr. Sean Austin.
Welcome, Sean!
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show. We are thrilled to have you.
Absolutely, no problem.
I love Ghost Loop. It must seem so surreal that you have a new show on the Travel Channel, Ghost Loop.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a huge opportunity, the way I look at it, to be able to reach families that I would have never been able to reach, because we don't get paid for this sort of thing. To have the backing to reach people that need genuine help and have the opportunity to do so and try and help them and bring spiritual awareness by people watching, what takes place from that.
Now, for you, Sean, for Ghost Loop, Sean, how do you find these families that you go to help?
Well, there are normal cases that come to me and from me, but, there were, reach outs on social media for people that are experiencing that sort of thing. So,
okay.
Obviously you get people coming in and then you kind of try to figure out who's legit and who's not. Because obviously these days there's plenty of people that are there for different types of reasons. But I mean, some of these cases we weren't aware of until we got to actually the property.
Wow. Yeah. Because it's such a, social media has just made such a difference in the world today as we know it. Eh, Marie?
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Because I mean, back in the day, like, where did you go if you had a ghost problem? Like, who are you going to call?
Oh yeah, back in the old days, all you would have is like a yellow page, yellow pages, and you'd have to look up to find someone like Ed and Lorraine Warren, or they'd be doing lectures, or you just heard about it through word of mouth. I mean, that was all you had.
Like, went to the university to try to find some department that, like,
maybe a parapsychologist, yeah,
something like that. So it's kind of neat now. So Sean, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Now you've been a paranormal investigator for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a long time.
Yeah, been doing about like 11 years now. I would say that I got into the field by mistake in the process of trying to prove to a friend that is probably the craziest skeptic that I've ever met in my life, and I would call him my trigger into the paranormal. I took him to a local cemetery that had a lore of 3 women in white that would chase you out of the cemetery, and I tried to have him have an experience. But instead, as he's laughing at everything, I was in front of this little girl's grave, and her name was Jenny. And I had a flip phone right before we had these smartphones come out, and I record audio with my phone. And I remember sitting there and asking a question, Jenny, are you still here? And I thought I heard something with my own ears, but I was like, I don't know. I've never had an experience. So I was recording audio, this and that, and like he's laughing the whole time. And not until the next night, I just decided to listen back. And when I said to Jenny, are you still here? You hear this little girl, like this child, say, my 2 toys died. And it just creeped me the hell out. I just had, uber body chills, and like I was terrified, but I was exhilarated. Yeah. And then I listened to a couple more of the recordings, and then you hear someone say muerto, which is Spanish for death, and all these other responses starting to like, come through while we were recording. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And, it's kind of funny, about 2 to 3 weeks later, at the foot of my bed, to the right of my bed, actually, it was light out already in my old apartment. And I woke up and there was a shadow of a little girl right there at my bed. And I, squealed like a dying seal for a hot second, and it disappeared. From then on, I had a friend of mine, Greg, that was, somewhat interested in as well. And we started going into local cemeteries at night to get more EVPs, to increase our experience and tiers of experience, to get more answers, to research, to understand it. We would go to cemeteries and ask specific questions to get specific answers. What month did you die? What president was in office when you died? And we would get all relevant responses that were just wild. And it led me from there, investigating. And then ultimately I started my own podcast myself with somebody that brought me on a show. They said I had a calling into this sort of thing, and I guess I did. And then I did my own podcast for a little while, and then I was looking for guests, and I actually didn't know who Ralph Sarchie was. The first book that I actually read that actually helped me, it was very easy to read, informative, was Ed and Lorraine Warren's book, The Demonologist.
Okay, I read Gerard Brittle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that book too, yeah.
And then I read John Zappis's book, Shadows of the Dark. And when I, researched Ralph and I wanted to bring him on the show, I had reached out on Facebook, and then we ended up talking on the phone for a couple of hours. And I brought him on the show, and then he asked me if I'd be interested to come on some cases with him. And I said, absolutely yes.
So for anybody who's listening, who, when we say Ralph, Sean is referring to Ralph Sarchie. And Marie, we've talked about Ralph before. I think we just talked about him with Jimmy.
I was just going to say, he was kind of a key player in our last episode with the Malachi Martin documentary.
And so Ralph Sarchie is a paranormal investigator. He is a retired
demonologist.
He's a right. Sorry, he's a demonologist. He's retired NYPD officer, isn't he? And they made a movie about him called Deliver Us from Evil, which was starring Eric Bana and Olivia Munn. Great movie. Scary.
So you must have been just jumping out of your skin to be invited by Ralph Sarchie to go on
an investigation.
Right?
Tell us about that.
I was just like floored. Again, to be around anybody that was around pioneering years of when the paranormal wasn't cool. When I started investigating, I was just going out to have the experience. I never thought it would turn into some sort of somewhat lucrative thing or a passion for me where I'd be like, wow, this has taken over my life in a really big way. Because obviously I was a musician for many years. That was that was my whole life to me, like writing music and performing and stuff. And when he asked me to come on some cases, I'll never forget that first case I went on him. It was something right out of a movie. It was a succubus case, and this guy's sitting in the chair. We're down in the basement. He whips out his relic of the true cross that Jesus was crucified on. And we have 3 of us behind the chair, and this guy's got his hands on the chair, and he whips out the relic right in front of him on his forehead. And he said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you, make a sign of your presence. If you're here right now, you do something. And like this guy's hands are shaking in the chair, and I'm just sitting there in complete, utter awe. Like, what is going on right now? And then, we went on some cases together. And then obviously that was the process of, I didn't realize that he was, putting together a team to do the pilot series we did on the Demon Files. And that was a really awesome experience for me, to be able to be mentored by him and learn how he did things. He's
a professional. He's a professional.
Oh, of course.
So the Demon Files was a show on the Travel Channel?
It was on Destination America.
Destination America. Okay, yeah. See, I'm in Canada, so we don't have all the same shows, but I have seen a couple episodes with Destination of the Demon Files and Ralph Sarchie. I mean, gosh, if I was an evil spirit, I would be scared by Ralph Sarchie.
You don't have to be an evil spirit to be scared.
He's
by
a
Ralph
badass.
Sarchie.
Like, he's totally tough.
Yeah. He definitely is.
Have to be being a cop and then, going in
100%.
and doing this. But and you felt like, was he a good mentor?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's a pretty extreme guy.
Yeah.
I was a little nerve-wracked to be around because he's pretty, he's intense.
He's intense.
It's his passion. He's passionate about what he does, and he's very, confident in his belief system and how he's been doing things. And he's been doing it for many years, and he's been very successful at helping people.
Yeah.
So I was just a sponge. I was soaking up everything, and it was helping me because I went through a lot of experiences, but it really helped me to define my faith further and to ultimately learn from him. Now I am a religious demonologist myself, and I didn't even know at one point do you deserve that title, and then he actually said to me no, the way you approach these cases and what you're doing, Sean, you're a religious demonologist. So I mean, I've been doing it for this long, and I've been helping out in cases, so I mean I just want to help people and help souls, but I mean that was a huge defining moment when it came to learning about demonology. I'd read books on it, and I read his book too before everything had actually happened. So by the time that I actually went on cases, we did the show. We did some cases after the show as well, and learned how he does everything. And again, very appreciative, humbled to be able to learn of something of that stature in the paranormal field and community. Again, because he worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren in the beginning. That's who we first began and worked with. Yeah. And then he was mentored by Father Malachi Martin and Bishop McKenna, who were probably the most respected exorcists of our time.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy stuff.
That's incredible. And so you and Ralph at some point parted ways when the show was over, and you continued on.
Yeah, I mean, he decided to take a little step back from doing cases because he's older and this and that. So he said he would take breaks here and there, and then he said when God felt it as if he needed to get back in it, he would get involved again. But he's taking a step back. He's just relaxing. I mean, obviously I'm still younger, and I want to help as many people and souls I come in contact with. I want to make an impact. So yeah, I've been doing massive amounts of investigations. I've traveled around the country. I've lived in haunted places a week at a time with other friends of mine like Dave Spinks and David Weatherly, who've been doing in the paranormal field for 25, 30 years as well. Mm-hmm. And then finally that led to me publishing my first book, Shadow Chaser. And I never thought I'd be a published author. I never thought any of this crap would happen. Here I am doing backstrokes in ghostly, weird, unexplained places. So,
Tell us about
Dave Spinks and David Weatherly. Aren't they SOS is the name of their group?
Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, David Weatherly's very he's very informed about black-eyed kids. Yeah. He has a lot of knowledge.
Times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
nice.
They're both awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to David Weatherly a few different times on different radio shows that I've done in my previous podcast. But then I've also interviewed both the Davids together as the Society of the Supernatural.
Yeah, I was part of their group. I was traveling around with them a bunch of times. We went to some crazy places. They took me to some crazy places, and some of those places that we went together are in my first book, Shadow Chaser. Some of the crazy things that happened to us.
So your book, Shadow Chaser, is that available to purchase now?
Yeah.
Yes. So my book, Shadow Chaser, is available on Amazon. Obviously I live in the US. I feel bad, people ask me just mail it out to me to the UK. I feel bad the shipping cost because I sign books from my website, Sean D. Austin. Mm-hmm. I mail out, signed books, but anyone that lives in the US, I mail out signed books or signed CDs for my music as well. Anyone who's interested, but yeah. And here I am working on my second book as well.
Tell us, what's your second book about?
Well, it's like a continuation.
Okay.
I want to call it Shadow Chaser something. It's just some more crazy cases that I've got involved in. I just basically, I think I'm going to have like these books like Shadow Chaser, and then it's going to say something under it, kind of just like a defining sentence that involves the overall picture of what these stories are going to take, the journey with you on that. There's a story that's really crazy. That's movie level stuff that, it actually happened right before I met Ralph. And I decided to hold off on my first book. But it's about a girl who was possessed, and she was pregnant, and I was trying to help her. And it was the amount of evidence and the crazy things that have happened throughout this whole process was just absolutely astounding. It's still shocking to this day to me. I'd have her on recordings through the phone speaking English backwards and Latin, and I'd hear her like choking on the phone and laughing coming through the phone as she's choking, and I'd say a prayer for her over the phone, and then I felt burning on my arm. I had 13 slashes show up on my arm. She was going into trances, carving upside down crosses on a pregnant belly. I remember one time this is like a defining moment to me. I talk about a lot just to talk about validity to my faith. She can't even see me on the phone, and I have this recording of her, and she speaks in this creepy ass voice, something that you'd think right through on a movie, and going, "Sean, she's mine."
Oh.
And I was saying prayers, and I went silent. I had this about 6-inch crucifix in my room with me. She cannot see me on the phone, and I put the crucifix right up to the phone, hisses at me.
Oh, I just got chills.
Yeah, and I'm just
we heard of,
and it's just like, why would something react negatively, something religious of significance, to that psychic level and not be able to see me or what I was doing if that didn't mean something?
Right.
That just brought my faith to a whole huge level. Obviously my faith was growing. I was brought up Catholic, but when you witness evil spirits react negatively to things of religious significance, it's going to open up your mind. And these things don't like this shit. That's what they are. They're fallen angels, the demonic.
Right.
And so, they react very terribly to these things. And I had so many crazy experiences with this girl, and it's going to be really sad, tragic, but I think it's important to get that story out there so people know not to mess with dark magic and shit like that, because she dripped blood on a pentagram and did this whole thing, and there she is, and then she's pregnant. Nobody wanted to touch this case with a 10-foot pole, because if something happened to the baby, they would be responsible. But this girl's calling me all the time, and I'm getting emotionally involved, and I feel bad for her, and I'm trying to guide her in so many different ways. I had a priest at her place, blessing the place, and allegedly the priest ran out of the place and felt nauseous. One time I'm on the phone with her, and her friend is on her phone calling me, and I hear just jolts hitting metal all over the cars, and both of them are screaming bloody murders, and they're telling me that there's black birds hitting the car as they're driving back to their car, and her friend's screaming, "What is going on? What the hell's going on?" It's
Wow.
unbelievable. Yeah.
That's
She had an occult
terrifying.
symbol show up on her pregnant belly that we asked an occult specialist, and he said that the symbol means infertility. I had visions with this thing too, and one vision I had that she was sitting up against the wall, and her eyes were changing all different colors, and I wasn't looking to my right, but I knew something was to the right of me, and it was biting on my earlobe, and it was fangs or sharp teeth, and then it whispered in my ear this demonic name, Estharte, and I woke up and I looked up the name, and she's some sort of demonic goddess involved with fertility, and I'm like, what? There's no way I could have known that.
No.
I had so many circumstances with this, she had another kid, and her son, he was a couple years old, and she'd go silent and go into a trance, and then the kid would be in the background, and I hear him, and he goes, "Look, mommy's floating." And so much stuff, guys, but I'm not gonna go really into, but I gave you some creepy stuff. It's
You said that she was dripping blood onto a pentagram. So was she practicing black magic?
She was when she was in high school. I think she was getting bullied pretty hard, and her aunt was into witchcraft, and she kind of showed her some ways to do stuff. And she said she did some sort of witchcraft, and like those people ended up in a bad car crash and stuff like that. And she didn't know if she felt responsible. And she later on in her life, I mean, she was getting scratched and stuff, but the activity, you know, this or that. But like once she was pregnant with her second child is when the activity really got bad. And these are the things that would happen. Like I couldn't understand what she was saying on these recordings when she'd go into a trance, and I recorded it and I have to put it backwards to understand it. And you'd hear her talking about an exorcism backwards and saying stuff about the baby. Like, you know, it's just unbelievable.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, especially that reverse speech stuff. I dabbled in that a little bit. I had an app where you could record a word and then play it backwards to see if it had another meaning. And I was trying to. I had my own little situation I was trying to figure out, and it was spooky. And to be honest with you, I'm a little distracted right now, so. When we were filming the intro, I had the printer fall off my couch, right? I gotta ask you, your book, did you publish that through Visionary Living?
I published it through David Weatherly's publishing company.
Because I am in Seattle, Washington, and in my studio, and I cut out Rosemary Ellen Guiley's obituary, and I have it on my bulletin board. And it's vibrating right now. It's the only piece of paper that's moving. I just tried to take video of it.
Really?
Yes.
I kind of knew Rosemary. She knew who I was. I met her a few times.
Yeah. So, anyway.
She's a very nice lady.
I know. Isn't she fantastic?
Yeah, she was a plethora of knowledge, too.
A wonderful, wonderful soul. Wonderful soul. So, maybe that she was the one that moved the printer. In fact, I even thought that afterwards, because I have a book myself it's completed. And I was going to submit it to her publishing group. And I felt like it was Rosemary telling me, print your book and submit it. What are you doing? You're supposed to be writing. Like, you know, she was kind of pushing me to get it done. Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject. It's just bizarre. It's still moving. It's the only piece of paper.
Strange.
I know.
Hey, anything's possible.
Yeah, anything's possible. I'm freaked out about that story you just told, though, Sean. How do you clear? So, have you had a lot of experience with demonic infestation?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone on a bunch of demonic infested homes and stuff by now. But I mean, I've never been on a solemn exorcism. Obviously, a solemn exorcism is on a person, an individual. That has to be, you know, obviously a Catholic priest. But you know, for the way I was taught through Ralph, you can perform an exorcism on a location with what we do. We do the Pope Leo III prayer with blessed frankincense and myrrh, blessed holy water, blessed salt, and the blessed Saint Benedict medals in the four corners of the property, and you just smoke out the entire property with the prayer and all those methods. But when people are involved in being possessed, I mean, this girl was the one thing that I experienced that was truly possessed, and it was just an unreal, shocking story, because I've never encountered any story. I mean, even like movies that are based on a true story, I've never seen a movie that's based on a true story of a woman that was possessed while she was pregnant. I mean, think about the most harrowing, horrific like situation you could think of when it comes to demonic possession, with like a girl who's possessed while she's pregnant. Because what can you do? What the hell can you do?
What about The Rite? Remember The Rite with Anthony Hopkins? He was treating a girl in Italy. She was pregnant. And she was pregnant by her father, which is just an open invitation for demonic, because that's hellish and hurtful, and that's what they're attracted to.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
but
so I don't. What I'm saying is, like, it's horrifying.
Well, I don't understand why. Okay, so if the father raped the daughter and got her pregnant, how isn't she suffering enough? Why does that open her up to demonic infestation?
Because the act is against God.
But who's to say she was a participant?
She wasn't.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, she already is a victim from her dad. Why does she have to be a victim of demonic attack as well?
The demonic don't care. That's what they do. They prey on the weak.
Right. So the sexual abuse, I mean, this is another reason why certain individuals should never be involved in the paranormal, because they can see it around your aura. There's some sort of taint or a crack in your aura that they can sense through your time, because there's no conception of time in the spiritual realm, that they know that they have a better chance of victimizing people, that there's some sort of dark, satanic, evil act that has taken place, that they can victimize that person and attach themselves. And it, it's kind of like, the famous Warren case with the gentleman up in Massachusetts, Satan's Harvest. You know what I'm talking about?
Not the Glazer.
Maurice.
Maurice, yes.
His dad was having sex with farm animals.
Yes.
And one day Maurice
and the sister.
And found his father having sex with like a pig or some shit. And, his dad was so upset that his son caught him that he actually forced his son to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, that was one of those, famous exorcism things that happened with that guy, with his eyes bleeding and, and all that crazy stuff that happened with him. So, I mean, it's very similar. But they're attracted to any sort of mockery of the human being, of the most horrific events that can take place for us as human beings when it comes to abuse and suffering and torture. They thrive of it. They get energy from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why. That is, I mean, to me, to sexually abuse your kid or any kid is a demonic act in itself. That's where that is the devil. That is evil. When you're taking somebody's will, right? In a sense that destroys their soul, like that destroys people. It can.
Yeah. And you never know with connections to people's lineage and history that could go further away that we can only speculate about, that there might have been some sort of invitation from generations before that allows them to come into certain individuals' lives later on as well. Which obviously can happen too. People doing satanic rituals, 2 generations before, and say that, the great grandson or granddaughter is going to be cursed or something like that. And all of a sudden there's, something happening to them. And then they discover that there was some sort of ritual, attached to them. So there's all sorts of factors at play, possibilities, and things that can be connected to why the demonic are invited in. And obviously, like some of these cases, we don't know all the information to have a better idea of what that is. But obviously, yes, these terrible, horrific acts are total draws to the demonic.
Yeah, it's like sharks with blood in the water. Although now they're saying that sharks aren't attracted to blood in the water, but that's another podcast.
Well, what I say is, like, when people, if there were like 5 or 10 people going into a really dark, haunted like asylum, and like the suffering of these people, there's the demonic are there because they're drawn to the suffering of people, and the souls are probably still there and living through that stuff. And if there's 5 or 10 people that walk into this crazy dark haunted place, and one of those individuals was like sexually abused and had incest with their father, or was bad drugs or something like that, that person out of those 10 people is like a wounded fish in the water, in a school of fish. In that school of fish, there's that one wounded fish flapping in the water. So who is that shark going to go up to? It's the one that is the best chance to be their prey. And that's who the demonic's going to go right up to, because their aura is projecting that, and they're aiming right at that because they know that's the best chance for that person to victimize them. And they can see a little bit into the future, again, because there's no conception of time. And that's how they can involve themselves and get that best chance to take place.
Oh, they're just so diabolical and horrible. How does it, luckily for me, I have never been around any demonic entities. How does it feel when you go, because your body is a conduit, right? The hair on our back will raise, or the back of our neck, unless you have hair on your back. I don't know. I don't, thank goodness. I'm a girl. But how does remember when I said we laugh at the worst time, Sean?
No, I mean, like,
how does it feel when you go into a place? Do you know? Does your body tell you? How do you know?
Of course. I mean, you might get the putrid smell. It might be sulfur or like manure, or just straight up like rotting flesh, or you just feel like a nauseous feeling, or just like your stomach is just clenched. You feel just complete utter pressure on your head and in your chest. And the air is just thick. It's like a production to walk across the room with that level of oppressive energy in the location. But there's certain characteristics that these types of energies do, and that's what we look for to define if it's genuinely demonic, like the scratching on the walls, the smells, the 3 scratches, the 3 knocks, all sorts of things that could be mockery to the Holy Trinity. Are they lining up physical items in symmetrically? Which is strange what they do, but these are some of their MOs.
They do? They line things up?
Yeah, and some of these famous demonic cases that I've seen, that they'll take like toys or like chairs or like tables and literally pile them up. You remember like the movie Poltergeist?
Yeah.
That happens on some of those. There's some really big demonic cases out there that sort of thing would take place.
Oh my gosh.
So line them up, it's not necessarily linear, but it could also be like a tower of, like they're stacking.
Yeah. Like a symmetrical shape, like some sort of like, to me, it's got to be some sort of symbolic nature intent. They're trying to give something. And, I'll give you an example of that, when we start talking about Amityville, because I wrote about something that was very symbolic to me, that stood out to me. There's some sort of strange connection to the number 13 with the Amityville story.
Do you think that Amityville, Amityville is like one of the most famous haunting in the world, I'm going to say, probably one of the most famous hauntings in the world. And it's funny because we did a show on Amityville. We had a guest on the show. And she had been in the house, and she worked with the Lutzes back in the 70s. She was the investigative reporter who they gave the scoop to when they fled the house. But it's funny because the day I booked her, I got pushed the day I booked her.
Pushed off your horse?
Yeah. And I still don't know to this day what happened. I was riding my horse, and all of a sudden I was on the ground, and he was not moving. And wow. I never really correlated the two. But I spoke to somebody about it, and they said they were most likely connected.
I mean, well, timing's everything when it comes to this stuff, so you never know.
Like, I didn't know. But talk to us about Amityville. So,
and the number 13, is that something that you can talk about right now?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I'll go into a little bit, but like I was writing about it, in this chapter, my second book, because, as I was digging like a little bit more research about the case and just finding these strange connections of leading to, I'm trying to figure out, like, unravel the mystery of my experience, what it means, and who are these things that's coming to me. It's kind of specific, but like, broad at the same time. I don't know who it is or, what really took place and things like that. So, all right. Well, I'll just start off from the beginning. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I use an application called Periscope. It's Twitter's main live broadcasting, application that you can live stream, people can watch. And, I live like 45 minutes away from the Amityville house. And I thought one summer I'll go there. So I went to the grave of the DeFeo family's buried. And I was stood out there, and I was live streaming during all this besides my own personal experiences. But I sat there in front of the grave and I asked, who's still here from the family, the DeFeo family, and it said John. And then I also asked, who was the demon that made Ronald kill his family, and it said a demon's name, Belial. So,
oh my God.
I didn't know until I got back to my car, because it was during the day. People were walking around. I never want to interrupt someone visiting their loved ones that I'm sitting there using equipment or doing something ghostly, like when they're trying to visit their loved ones and give respect to them. So I got back in my car adjacent to the DeFeo grave and turned the spirit box on. And I actually, right before I turned the spirit box on, I realized that the famous picture that Lorraine Warren's photographer took in the house, that little kid boy ghost's face, looks most like John. Everyone thinks it looks most like John, and when I look at it, it does look most like John to me. So I go on the spirit box, and it's never happened to me ever. I put the spirit box on, and this little kid's voice constantly is coming through over and over again. The same voice, just mumbling and speaking with me. And, and obviously, yes, you got to be objective about who you're speaking with. It could be a demonic entity, but let me tell you something. I'm like, And it's like he's like, it's me or something like that. And I'm like, well, John, do you want me to say a prayer for you? Because that's what I've been doing for years, just like I do on Ghost Loop, to try to help him cross over. And the little kid goes, please. And, you know, to me, and even Ralph agreed when I asked him, which I put in, you know, what I'm writing about, is like, in my opinion, no demonic entity would ever want you to pray for any reason to bring you closer to God, period. There's no way. No way. And that was the way I perceived.
Did he even say please? No, just kidding. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
So he did. He did say please, and I said a prayer for him. And so I left the gravesite and I went by the house. And I stood in my car and left the spirit box on, and then the name George came through, and in like a Long Island accent. Yeah. And so but the kid's voice kept on coming through. And it said a couple of things, because eventually I'm going to slice this all up. I want to put it all in like one video, like of everything that's happened. But anyways, I had prayed for the kid. I can't force these spirits to cross over when I pray for them. It's kind of like I'm handing them a flashlight in a dark room and like, here's your chance. You know, you got to accept God's unconditional love and forgiveness, and here's your chance to go. But in some of these cases, I know that there's negative entities holding spirits back and making them afraid. And by making them afraid, it's keeping them at a lower vibrational frequency rate to blind them from having the courage to do so and be in that dark room. So when I went home, the first experience I had was I woke up. I was in my bed, and this was like 3 years ago. And I was in my bed, and this vision. I was inside the Amityville house, and I'm looking up on the first tier onto the second floor where the stairs go up. There were 3 perfect shadow figures. I saw head and shoulders standing on the top of the stairs, and I yelled out to them in this vision, if John DeFeo is here, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to let this kid go. And then all of a sudden I could see to my left, there was a room adjacent to the stairs, in this room that's separate to the stairs, and a piano picked up out of midair, and it was thrown at me. And when it hit my body, I felt the jolt and woke up, and I saw this black mist go through my ceiling. Oh. And then I went and looked at my phone at the time. It was 3:15 in the morning. That was the first thing that happened. Oh,
man, Sean, holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay, can I tell you something, though? Can I just jump in here really quickly?
Sure.
You said you were in your dream, you were at the bottom staring up the stairs, and you saw something. Okay? Laura, who had been in the house, who we interviewed, said one day she had keys to the house for the longest time. After they did this, what she calls the psychic sleepover with her and Lorraine Warren and a few other people, Mary Pasquarelli, a few other people that you've probably heard of. She said she went back there one Saturday afternoon during the day, sunny day, was out walking her dog, thought, you know what, I'll stop by the house. She went into the house. Her dog stood at the bottom of the stairs, stared up the stairs at that first landing and started growling, hackles raised, growling.
Oof.
And she said, she's like, I was going to go up the stairs. And then she's like, and then I just said, forget it. So there's that.
Yeah. So, yeah. So after that, what happened? So right after that, I went to Connecticut with a girlfriend of mine who's sensitive, and I was periscoping again, live streaming. I was in Connecticut. We went to some haunted cemetery. We're walking around, and it was, I guess it was like maybe 50 degrees out or something like that. And all of a sudden, like, she's like, something really dark is watching you right now. I'm like, really? And out of nowhere, these flies start flying around my periscope. And everyone's like, yo, what the fuck? And then everyone's like, you see these flies? Like, why are they swarming out of nowhere? And all of a sudden, this nasty growl comes through the spirit box. And then it says the same name of the demon that it said in front of the grave site of the DeFeos. Okay. And then it said Amityville. So I was like, what the hell? That creeped me out. And then I'm like, once again, I just started having these visions, and I was waking up 3:15 in the morning. The next time I had something happen was, I think it was I had a vision that I was floating over the Amityville house. I was looking down like I was a drone. I was maybe like 50 feet above it, looking down on it, and I could hear thousands of flies buzzing in my ear. And then I woke up 3:15 in the morning. The black mist goes through my ceiling.
Again.
Yeah. Then again, I had another vision. I was in the house and there were clocks everywhere, and there's a black dog, and they all started dinging at 3:15 in the morning, and the dog's barking at the wall in this one room, and this black mist comes out. I wake up, chills, black mist goes through the ceiling, and it's 3:15 in the morning. So it was just like I was having all these crazy things. Then I started to have like some sort of connection with George Lutz, and I would see his face in my bedroom, in my mind's eye, and he would say that was my house. And then I had another vision, and it was in the boathouse, and the door creaked open in the boathouse, and I walked in. It was all dark in there, but I could see this shadow that was darker than the actual black in the boathouse, and I was like, "Is that you, George?" And then I woke up, same, crap. Anyways, I ended up going. Ralph is a little part of this story, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no!
So,
Don't tell me. Okay.
So, I was having all this crazy stuff. It kind of like backed off a little bit, but then all of a sudden, like I went with Ralph. I told him kind of the whole story, and he agreed with me, like the whole thing about the kid, asking for prayers. And I'm like, these things like came at me, like they're really pissed off. And Ralph and I went to the house and sat in my car and, put my device on, something I use called the Faza box. And, we were asking questions. And then Ralph was like, "John, is that you in that, photo that they took in the 70s? And you hear the kid come through and he goes, "That wasn't me." And like, it's just really creepy because like, even Ed Warren had always said that he thought that was the diabolical. You see the eyes are glowing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
obviously it's probably mocking the kid, the fact that they do have the kid's soul.
Yeah.
The kid was there. So, and then we even asked, like, could you mimic the gunshot that they heard that night? And then I had it come through my car speaker, the box. The whole car shook with a gun noise. And like Ralph was like, and I were like just in complete utter shock. Anyway, so after that, Ralph believed me, like he believed that this kid was trapped there. We were getting information like there, and he dedicated a mass to him, like in his communion, said, pray to God, just like I prayed as well. And, nothing had actually happened. But then I just went back recently I went twice, and, I asked him, like, is John here? His voice never came through. And like all of a sudden it's, I went to the grave site again and it said it's over. And I don't know what that meant. But when I came home, I only went to the DeFeo grave that night. I came home and I'm dozing off and I see this kid and he's got water all around him. And he's like, "I drowned." And then all of a sudden he just starts humming, like going nuts. And then I see these two glowing yellow eyes. One was really close to the kid and one was like really far away watching me. And I felt like I woke up and just like, it was like very creepy, unsettling feeling. I don't know what the hell that whole thing meant, but like, I felt like it was connected to it. But I just had so many things, but I went back there actually just like a week ago because I was actually going to Ralph's place to hang out with him one night. And I wanted to ask again, it seems like I'm like, is John here? Was I able to help him? And it said, you helped him. The kid never came through again. So I feel like there's a good chance I may have been able to help him.
So he's gone.
Right. And, since I'm writing this chapter about my experiences, like this other stuff started to happen. So I was actually filming Ghost Loop. We were in our case in Houston, and there was talks about our hotel being haunted. So I decided to scope in my hotel room, and I have this on video, and I'm going to do the comparison too. So in my mind's eye, while I'm sitting there, I saw George Lutz's face, and I'm like, wow, it's like, George, are you here right now? It says Lutz on the spirit box.
Oh.
And I'm like, George, why would you be following me? And then you hear clear as day, goes, the chapter. And then you hear him say, Amityville took my soul.
Oh.
Oh, I wondered about that.
Yeah. And it's his voice. I'm going to compare it. I'm going to rip it out and I'm going to put it up against one of his interviews like I did with what just happened 2 weeks ago, too. So I had that. And then just 2 weeks ago, I was in the cemetery and this voice comes through and goes, I'm in prison. and I'm like, immediately, my ear's really keen because I'm a musician and stuff. I'm like, that sounded like Ron DeFeo Jr.'s voice, and it blew me away. So I snipped it out and put it next to his interview, and the voice is uncanny. It's identical. I mean, he's got a very distinct, breathy, like Long Island voice, and I don't know if it's the demonic mocking or whatever it is, but as a matter of fact, too,
or whatever.
right before this, right before this happened, like maybe like a month ago, I had posted online something about I was writing about my experiences. I wanted to put this little piece in my book about my experiences, what happened to me, and someone emailed me and said that they were researching this case for 15 years, and he actually started corresponding with this gentleman who bought the negatives, the real negatives of the DeFeo murder crime scene from an auction, and took it home with him. And he was having nightmares, waking up at 3:15 in the morning and having demonic activity in his home. And then this gentleman spoke to this guy who I'm talking to and sent him copies of these images. And then this guy who I was talking to was having the same stuff happen at his place. And then he tells me that he just found out a year ago, because he stopped talking to this guy because weird things was happening. And once he stopped talking, it dissipated. He said that this guy, he just found out last year, who had the original negatives, hung himself.
Oh my gosh. Oh
no.
So now I have this guy. I'm like, look, would you be able to write this and add it to my book? And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. So actually, just last night, I'm asking him because we're conversing about it. He's like, dude, like I started writing your thing and I started having the nightmares again, and I'm really scared. Like I love to help you, but like, I really just I don't feel comfortable writing about it. Like, and so he's not writing the part for my book. So I'm just gonna have to briefly talk about it, how I heard from this guy, and leave it open to suggestion, because I really don't know the story, but I really believe that this really happened. So now he's freaked out too, because he's having stuff, but like, I'm having creepy stuff happen on and off, and it's referencing in places that I'm investigating, my normal investigations. It's coming through. I was just at this place last weekend. It's called Murdoch Whitney House in Massachusetts, and I was live streaming the whole time, and we're in this room where suicide took place, and something references Amityville. And then out of nowhere, I heard this fly buzz right to my left ear. Zzz, and like, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? And there's nothing in the room. It's like 16 degrees outside. And I'm like, did someone just see a fly in the room? Like, are you serious? And it's just like, I'm getting these little creepy references because, again, I'm acknowledging this story. It's a very profound, evil, tragic, and fascinating story at all once. But when you acknowledge these types of profound, huge cases, things start happening, and they're still happening to me right now. So it's really astounding. It's really crazy. But as a matter of fact, something else had actually happened. I had posted on my social media, but I was using this app flying home from California, called Spiritus app, and they have a visual ITC thing where the images change everywhere and you take screenshots, kind of like scrying with water. You've heard of that, right?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was bored on the plane. I'm like, I wonder, because I'm like, would this work? I'm just sitting there, and I took a couple of screenshots. I could not believe my eyes. I looked at it and immediately saw 3 perfect shadow figures standing next to the Amityville house.
Holy shit.
My God, dude. I'm getting seriously freaked out.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh my God, those are the things that I saw. I get chills just thinking about it right now, because it's just, I'm like, who are these 3 shadows? What the hell is this shit? But I mean, they're showing me. And I'm going to go back actually a little bit. I talked about it in my first book. Now, I'm going to give a speculation theory, which I'm going to put in my book, that this is why I had this vision. But I had a couple of visions involving Ed Warren. I had this one vision where I was in the car in the back seat with Lorraine Warren. She was wearing like a plaid skirt. It looked like it was in the 70s. Ed's driving, and he's like, we're off to the Amityville house. So we go to the Amityville house. Now, I wrote this before any of this happened. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what this meant. I had no idea what this meant. Mm-hmm. So we arrive at the Amityville house. We go inside the house, and Ed turns to me and goes, Sean, we're back in time right now. I'm like, really? And he's like, take a look up. And the word accolade was floating in midair, and like towards the the top of the first stairs. And I didn't know I forgot what the word meant. I had to look it up the next day, and it means like an accomplishment or honorary knighthood.
Yeah.
And he's like, Sean, you're a big part of all this. And I didn't know what that meant. But now looking back at this, maybe he meant I was having my hand in helping that kid cross over in this story. And here I am writing it now.
Absolutely. I agree with that hypothesis 100%.
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll help eradicate that evil once and for all, because it's just sitting there festering and waiting. And
Well, I mean, I found out more information because this kid that's afraid to write the story now, he was giving me information that I didn't know, that the family that moved in after the Lutz house, they lived there and ran out. The son or stepson, he was staying in Ronnie's room where the windows are, I guess.
yeah.
And he had a drug overdose, and on the way to the ambulance, he died.
Well, and
I looked it up on
was
the
a drug user. He was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but we know that the demonic will try to break you down and get you into that state, because him doing all that drugs, and if the abuse was taking place, and if he was involved with mob hits and burying bodies,
Yeah,
like
he claimed, yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, like, if he claimed, if any of that's true, I mean, even just doing the drugs alone, and if the abuse and the negativity was so strong, and let alone was on the property below the house before they even moved in there, that would created that perfect storm to take place. And now I also found another article that I didn't know about. This guy just sent me that was mind blowing too. It took place in 2010. There was an open house, and a realtor.
Yes, I
went
heard
inside
about
the
this.
house.
Tell the story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was up on, again, the second floor, and he felt of like a dark presence. He felt creeped out.
Yeah.
And they went down to the basement, and there was some hole that this huge cold air burst came out of nowhere, and he felt so uncomfortable he was out of that house.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, the lady that was with him didn't want to say anything because obviously she's trying to sell the house. But that's recent.
Yeah, in 2010 there were 3 of them, and they ran out of there.
Yeah. And let me tell you, like, you pull onto that street, I feel it immediately. The panic, the feeling. I'm sitting in my car. Like, I was there 2 weeks ago in my car, and I kept asking, like, who's still in the house? And it kept them responding, death. And then I had a pig snarl come through. And, I saw this black thing, darting by my car. It's just, it's profound evil there. But, I mean.
And it's still there.
It's so still there. Someone in my chat when I was outside the house scoping said that, the owners are renovating. Imagine if something happens because they're going to renovate.
Dude, do you feel like it's maybe calling you back there over and over and over? Do you feel compelled to go there?
Of course I feel compelled to go there now. Like, I'm like involved with it. I don't know, obviously I can't say for sure definitively if I had my hand in leading that kid to be helped, with me praying for him, going there and bringing Ralph there, and maybe him and his ultimate prayer in church to help the kid. He hasn't come through again. Those things are really pissed off and evil. I don't know if anyone else from the family's there, but I was just there last week, and Dawn came through, the name Dawn.
Was it a female
this whole thing
that said it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Sean, you might be a target now for whatever's there.
Of course I'm a target.
Okay, so, oh God, I'm freaking out.
But aren't you scared?
I'm freaking out. You have no idea. We need to have a conversation off air. Oh my God. Let me ask you, Sean, let me ask you a really quick question. So you're a demonologist. Is there a demon that goes by the name Death?
There's demons that will call themselves anything that has to do with terrible circumstances. Again, demons don't want to give you their real name,
right.
So they'll just give you something like that to say, that's what they call. There's things that can call you that.
Sorry, can we tell our listeners why they don't want to give you their real name?
So if they give us the real name, if we say their name in the name of Jesus Christ, it's direct aiming, acknowledgement, and commanding them in the name of Jesus, because we have their actual real name. That's why they do it with the priests in real exorcisms. So they really don't want us to have their real name. Everything I do, I feel like I've been a target since day one, since I got involved. It's been a calling with the types of, it's been a draw to like go up against evil for people, but not just people. for spirits, human spirits that are still earthly bound. And I still have evil spirits from other cases that are still lingering around me, still pissed off and relentless and wanting revenge for me from crossing over spirits. It's not the first time. It happened in my book too. That was very profound for me. And this guy's still around me. There's a drawing of this guy's creepy face in my book. And I believe that this man tortured, sadistically raped them and killed them and had them trapped in this place. I went with Dave Spanks. You know, I'll never forget it was the first time I prayed for a spirit, and I got the white dove in my mind's eye, which is now it's a female crossing over, a white horse is a male crossing over. Mm-hmm. And we had 2 spirit boxes on, and 2 female voices came through 2 different spirit boxes saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And this man came to me. He's really, really pissed off. I could hear him like, "You have hell to pay." And I'll never forget one of the most terrifying things that I experienced was I stayed in a hotel. We had stayed in this house for like two days, and I stayed in a hotel the next night, still in Ohio. And I'll never forget, I was laying in my bedroom, and I dozing off, and I saw this horrible face. What you would think of a demon: red face, yellow eyes, fangs, and black horns coming out of its forehead. And it didn't say anything, but it had this downward stare that stared into my soul, which was like one of the most unsettling things I've ever felt. And I woke up and threw holy water all around my hotel room. I drove home the next day, and I was exhausted emotionally from investigating for days. And I just got in bed. I saw the shadow dart around my bed, and then I saw this vision of this guy, his decrepit, zombified freaking face, decomposed, and he just glides his finger across his neck saying like, "You're dead." And then all of a sudden he disappears, and then I see this shadow with black horns in the corner of my bed. And when this thing spoke, it's like as if my whole room shook. It was like through a subwoofer, and it goes, "There are rules." And, again, woke up and blessed my place. I didn't know what this freaking thing meant, but after that, I had red marks that showed up on my wrists and on top of my feet. And I showed it to Ralph. I'm like, "I don't know what to know." He's like, "I don't know what to tell you, Sean. That looks like the freaking stigmata." I'm like, "I have no idea." But to me, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that's because I helped those 2 women cross over. And if this demonic thing's telling me that there are rules, I mean, if I'm breaking the rules of the devil, that's fine with me. So I don't know. Like, you take a soul away from the devil, you're an adversary to the enemy of man. So you got to be prepared for that.
Worst enemy you can have.
Yeah, but you also are doing God's work. So, I mean, you got the biggest, best possible bodyguard you can have. That's the way I look at it. I mean, you're helping the good.
Yeah,
if you're making enemies, then you're doing something right.
Enemies in those places, yes.
Like, I'm sorry, people say to me, because about what happened with the shadow people here and Michelle having to clear the house, and I said, you know what? I actually don't fear them because my faith in God is stronger than my fear of anything else.
Yeah.
And I mean, that might sound corny, right? And I'm not a religious person. I'm not religious, but I have a firm, full faith in the good force, whatever you want to call it, God.
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, real faith, I always make this metaphor, but like, if God told you to walk between 2 mountains and there's no bridge there, but he wants you to get to that other mountain, and he tells you to take that first step out, and you're in the top of the mountain, take that first step out as if there's no bridge there. That's real faith. So if you stand in front of a huge 8-foot shadow demonic creature and you're terrified, that demeans your faith. That undermines God's protection in you, and that thing smells it on you. Yeah. It knows. That's why I always make the metaphor of like vampires. You put a cross up to the vampire in a vampire movie, it recoils for a second, then starts laughing, and what do they say? You got to have faith.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. Like, if you truly believe and live in the fact that God's more powerful than any evil spirit, you will not fear these things. We can be startled. I can get chills, but I'm going to command it with conviction, and knowing that, like, I know that, like, if evil exists, good exists. So you got to take the right side here and make sure that you're protected, because I mean, especially for anyone who encounters these things, or you're meant to be involved in the spiritual paranormal sides of things, you got to be prepared. You have to have a strong faith foundation, because you can't fight these things with your fists. So, I mean, you better be prepared, because these things can attack you in all points in your life, psychologically, which is the most delicate attack that they can do. They can telepathically influence your thoughts and emotions where you think that they're actually yours, where you ultimately want to harm yourself or harm others, to make a mockery to your kind and say up to God, man can't handle life. That's why you shouldn't create a man.
Well, I just, if I get to be that, because I think when people like us, Marie and I with podcasting, you with investigations, my mom said when I first started this podcast, if you're talking about them, they're listening, so you have to be very careful. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's true?
Which part?
Just like that you attract, if you're doing research or you're reading about demonic possession or like you're attracting that sort of thing to you because you're giving it attention.
Yes, acknowledgement energizes spirits. Absolutely. I think what happens is that your aura starts to change. Once you become open to the possibilities of the spiritual realm, I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction. So when your aura changes, spirits can notice that your light is changing, and they know that they have a better chance to communicate with you, feel, hear, or see them, and they get energy from that. That's why they go towards children. They're fresh from the spirit realm. They haven't been contaminated with the rational perspectives we hammer into their impressionable minds, and spiritual beings take advantage of that. Human spirits that are lost and desperate, or there's negative, evil things that will try to induce fear with the easiest of us all to scare children. But if you're going through a spiritual awakening, yes, I mean, things can come to you. I don't think that like you can get in as much trouble just reading about something, but like you can definitely attract experiences reading to some extent, really wondering about it and really thinking about it and acknowledging things, especially if you go to places. I mean, but gauging the actual spiritual realm and not just reading things is a whole different ball game, because if you walk into these dark places and start that line of communication, that's the risk that we take as investigators when we go to these places. You have no guarantee. I mean, as strong as my faith is, these things come at me. I bless my place constantly. I still have things happen in my home. I mean, things come at me, and because I'm also have medium abilities, I'm sensitive. Like I'm able to, pick up on these receptions of what these spirits are telepathically projecting at me and around me. So, I mean, but I just use it as a tool to find out information of what's happening or what's going to happen, or if it's involved in a case I'm going to be going on. So I just use that as a tool. I know their games when they come to me and try to make me feel terrified in my room. It's just like, whatever, you're just trying to ruin my sleep. I've had so many demonic, ugly ass creatures come at me. I've seen them all come at me when I'm trying to sleep. Yeah, it is laughable, but I'm just like,
you're just trying to ruin my sleep.
Basically, yeah. I mean, like, unless I fucking.
If you don't get a good night's sleep, that's gonna affect the following day, right?
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they're targeting you and they have the permission to oppress you, they're going to want you to have no sleep for days, because then with no sleep, then you become reclusive and more chance to be depressed and influenced from a third person perspective. So, I mean, it just depends. But
you just said if they have permission to oppress you. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there has to be some sort of invitation for them to be able to come after you. They can't just walk into a haunted place. We take risks. Things can latch onto you because you're walking into the layer of darkness in general.
Yeah.
You're accepting that. I call it spiritual rules of engagement. It's how God allows these things to come into our life if we invite them in. And again, like when you go into these places, things can latch onto you, whether through magic or investigating the wrong way, or, where you can. Well, I mean, everyone has their own methods of investigating, but like you do something where it latches onto you, and it allows itself to oppress you and break you down. And they can wait dormant years. I mean, I've been on cases where they messed around the Ouija board when they're teenagers and go into the house and there's a black hooded thing telling their kid to harm themselves and to cut themselves. And we're doing an investigation and Ouija board comes through the spirit box. And it's just like, when was the last time you played with it? Oh, like 20, 30 years ago. Yeah, there's no conception of time. These things do not want to be recognized. So they can sit there dormantly, patiently, easily, waiting till you have no clue it has anything to do with paranormal to get the best time bracket of causing chaos within you and victimizing everyone around you that you care about, because they don't want to be recognized very quickly. And if it happens right after you come back from a haunted place, that's more suspect for you to kind of pick up what's happening, and you're going to get help faster, potentially. And then these things are tactically coming at us. They're at war with their kind. in the shadows, and that's the delicate nature of what we're dealing with. You have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, and that's why I was reading books. Not only is it the most fascinating part, the taboo corner of the paranormal when it comes to the demonic, but it also informs you. It helps you to realize the worst case scenarios that can take place to prepare you for what these things are capable of doing.
Why do they do it? What's their end game?
Well, I mean, they fought God over the creation of man. They were beautiful angels. Lucifer was almost as beautiful and powerful as God. And when God came up with the idea of creating man, our spiritual beings are going to live in physical bodies as a vessel to have the chance to progress for our souls, and with the magical free will choice to do what's right or wrong in our lives. We have an opportunity to be an example of what God stands for, unconditional love and forgiveness, to do something for our fellow man, to share that light, which is representing what God stands for, is that exactly that. And the devil hates us. They don't want to worship a creature that has no higher knowledge, because we base everything on faith. There'd be no purpose for faith as a human race if we knew what exactly we were accountable for. If we knew what we were attracting and like what we were going to be judged on, if we were doing terrible things, and we were talking from like an eternal place, or be trapped, or be scared, or be judged, to be in some sort of hell. If you do horrible things in life and be stuck in that, I mean, I think people will be changing their attitudes really quickly. But that's really why the creation of man is so special, is because we base it on experience. So the terrible things that we cope with and endure, turning something dark into something light, is really the magical chance that we have to get through our life and make an example out of it. People go through tragedies, lose loved ones, lose children, which is the most horrific thing. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they'll come out with some law that prevents hundreds and hundreds or thousands of other children from dying the same way. There's a positive element that can always come from something dark, but it's really how we cope and deal with it. And that's the real beautiful thing about what we're capable in this life, and the devil hates that. They want us to give up. They want us to commit suicide. They want us to, make an example that God should have never created humans, that there is evil. There's always going to be good and bad, and good and evil, but the core unit of humans is really is a magical, beautiful thing that we're capable of, and there is a big part of that. And I think good always prevails, and the devil is just wanting to take revenge and show God that man shouldn't have been created, because they were cursed, they lost, and they're down here, and that's all they're consumed with, just jealousy, the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah,
just all the negative shitty stuff, basically. Yep. Just all the negative
gluttony,
shitty stuff.
Rage, jealousy, whatever it is.
Sloth.
Yeah, sloth isn't that bad, come on. The sloth have to be one.
Sloth. Well, it's not the animal that they're referring to. It's the inactivity of, just doing nothing. Right?
Well, yeah. I don't know. I read a book for like 4 hours yesterday.
Yeah, but you were reading a book.
It was a good book.
And you were probably enlightening yourself, right? It was a...
Not really.
Oh.
But, it wasn't it was a start. It was fiction.
But, okay, so... But sloth is more like, I feel like when they really get their hooks into you, and then you're unmotivated, and you don't really care about anything anymore, so you just basically sit there and let time go by. Does that make sense to you, Sean?
Well, that's just straight up oppression. So they're trying to break you down where you become lazy, you don't want to do anything, and what that would ultimately lead to is that subconsciously you would say, oh, I give up, just take me over. And by doing that, that would ultimately lead to possession.
Yeah.
But there's, that's a lot of it. But a lot of people go through this demonic type oppression, and they just don't know it. But it can lead to that situation. But I mean, there's a lot of different types of negative entities out there that can do that sort of thing. And then there's different levels of how powerful they are and what they invited in that specific individual, evil spirit. So, there's so many different circumstances that can take place for people.
Do they ever just pick on anybody who hasn't invited them in?
I mean, I don't think so. Okay. Somebody who moves into a house, but there's a demonic entity in there that gives them permission, because that house has already been infested with that demonic energy. So that allows them to attack the people that are living in their home, because now they're walking into their lair. So, I mean, they never invited it in, but they're walking into it. So that's basically like them walking into an abandoned asylum where this demonic thing is, and this thing already has permission to be in that home. So then it can start doing what it typically does to the people that invited it in the first place.
Oh, man.
Do you think
so you're just not safe? Pardon?
Well, I was going to ask him, do you think that they can even like send out beacons to get certain individuals to come to their location?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I've seen it on cases. I remember watching this. There was a great show that was like years ago. It was on Animal Planet, The Haunted. Do you guys remember it?
Yeah.
It was a fantastic show. Yep. They always involved an animal being there, but I remember this one episode where the family was looking for a house, and they were looking everywhere, and she was pregnant, and all of a sudden they got this message on their answer machine and saying, "Oh, I got this house. I want you guys to come check out." So they called the guy back, and he's, they're like, "Yeah, I heard you got a house to check out." He's like, "Well, I do, but I never left you a message." And they went to the house, and the wife was just absolutely drawn to the house, and all this evil shit started happening, and she was pregnant, and she got pushed down the stairs, and they're getting attacked in the house. And then they ended up finding out that this like husband had actually murdered his wife and pushed her down the stairs to kill her baby in the same like MO, and there was like an evil spirit there as well. And just like there's just one of those circumstances where they can draw you in and leave messages, and like when someone really didn't leave a message, like, I mean, yeah, they can pull people in, for sure. There's all sorts of things that they can do. So yeah, you gotta be careful.
And now with social media, they can really fuck with somebody if they wanted to, right? Like by, having some post randomly show up that's gonna upset, maybe a happy marriage.
Do you think they do that?
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, like, remember Greg Ludwig? We had this one guest on, from the Zach Bagans Museum.
I remember Greg.
That dude,
oh, yeah.
And he had, like, his Facebook randomly posted something that he did not put up there.
Well,
that happened to me, too.
Did it?
Yeah. I had a Facebook post that was posted on my wall, and I just looked at it. I didn't look at the date and time, and my buddy and his sister, I'm like, dude, your sister, like, are we going to a Mexican restaurant tomorrow? I'm like, what the hell is that? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, ask her. And he's like, no, she didn't post anything on her wall or nothing, and she doesn't even know what you're talking about. So I look closer at the post, and the post, it only had the date from 8 years ago. It didn't have a new date, so it wasn't a repost. It was the only old date. And that date was the day of their brother's funeral. He died of a drug overdose.
What the hell?
What the hell, dude?
Yeah. And there's no other date besides that date from like a gazillion years ago.
So, okay, now I'm going down a rabbit hole, which I'm very well known to do.
Yeah.
So you know how they talk about in the Bible that eventually we're going to have to take the mark in order to purchase like food and survive, or deny it, and then we'll just have to grow our own food and hunt or whatever, and it's going to be apparently in our wrist is what the translation of the Bible is, and you would know this better than me, so correct me if I'm wrong. So I have a very unhealthy addiction to my cell phone, and I noticed that it's very often in my left hand. And it occurred to me, I was like, this device right here, and we're fitting to go to 5G, and for those of you that aren't familiar with 5G, I just Google it, and you'll get a little idea of what I'm talking about. This device, is this what the Bible's referring to? Is our cell phone.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously you can compare and speculate if there's some sort of connection to it. You never know.
And when you're holding your phone, which you do a lot, it's right there next to your wrist, right? Like, not to mention we have watches now that connect to our phones that we wear on our wrist. And we have Google Pay, and we have PayPal, and all of that, right?
It's just gonna get worse too. I mean, they already I saw that technology too. It's called memory clothing, where eventually our clothes are gonna be hooked up to the internet. So basically, if you drop to the floor, the ambulance is already on their way, and they know your exact medical history before they get there. So that's where it's gonna be heading.
Yeah, that's the 5G business I'm talking about. Craziness. So yeah, that was just like an epiphany I had recently, about a week ago. I was like, dude, it's honestly because I got a smartwatch that connected to my phone, and that's when I was like, I don't know if I want to wear this thing anymore. Like, I know I just got it, but is it that important that I know how many steps I took? Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's technology. It's going to happen, but when it comes to spirits, I mean, they can manipulate anything that's electrical.
Right.
And I think there's people that are skeptical about apps and stuff, but I'm telling you, I mean, I've been using apps too, even on my own. I mean, they can manipulate anything, dude. If they can post on their walls from people not doing it, leave text messages from people who don't even have the phone number anymore, or turn TVs on without it being plugged in, yeah, they can do anything they want with things that have to do with electricity. Trust me.
I believe it, and it's just This year, I think, is going to be an important year in the paranormal community, in the spiritual community as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully in a good way, right?
That'd be nice.
Let's brighten up the conversation a little bit after Marie went down the naughty rabbit hole. Yes, Corey. Pardon me for coughing.
Oh no!
You're all having nightmares tonight.
I know. I'm going to have a bad dream. Sean's story scared me. This was the scariest podcast we've ever had.
Well, it's scary, but I'm loving it. This is probably one of the best interviews that I've done in the 6-7 years that I've been doing radio and podcasting. Sean, for real.
Okay, I hate to say I told you so, Marie, but I told you he was going to be a good guest.
Dude. Yeah, the way that you are explaining everything is you're very eloquent, and your analogies are really easy to understand, and I really appreciate you and what you do, and the fact that you came onto our show.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, this is what I do, and I'm involving and getting it out there and speaking about it. We all synergistically can learn from each other and comparing stories and stuff like that. It's all about spreading spiritual awareness.
Exactly.
So I just want to go back to you went to the Haunted Museum, didn't you, in Las Vegas recently?
Yes.
I saw something on Facebook. How did you enjoy that? How was that experience?
I loved it. I mean, I had some things kind of follow me from that place too before I went too. I heard someone whisper in my ear, Dr. Kevorkian. I was having flashes of, I saw a mirror, the stairs, which I think was the demon house, and then I saw John Wayne Gacy's clown face. But the Dr. Kevorkian thing was kind of eerie, but walking through that place and obviously being sensitive like myself, it was just a whirlwind of different energies walking around. And I'm sure every time if I went there again, I'd feel something different. But when I was in the funeral room, I felt someone's finger just glide across the right side of my face, legit, not even spider webs or anything like that. It felt like someone's finger went across my face. And I told them they were going to check the cameras, but I mean, it was, and they were saying later on that there was a lot of activity taking place in that room.
Yikes. Did you get to meet Zach Bagans?
No.
Oh, even though you're both on the Travel Channel?
No, I have not.
Oh, too bad. Yeah, I've heard legit scary stuff about that place. He's got all kinds of stuff all in one room.
In that funeral room, isn't that a real skeleton in the coffin?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, to me that seemed, I mean, it's you know what I'm saying? I'm kind of asking for it.
Wow.
So let's talk about your music really quick.
Sure.
Yes, I love your voice. And I love Last Kiss is one of my favorite songs. And so when I was doing research into you, obviously I had to do one. Sorry, don't get creeped out by that. It came up that you've had this whole music career. So I think I felt what I felt was basically your first passion is music.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's you're a musician first and foremost. So tell us a bit about that. Have you been playing for a long time? What kind of music do you like?
Yeah. I've been doing it for 18, 19 years playing guitar. I mean, the reason why I started playing guitar was when I when I was a little kid and I saw that music video of Jeremy at Pearl Jam, when I saw him, his eyes rolling up in his head, singing about such a serious thing.
Yeah.
It's the first time I got the chills listening to a rock song, and it made me want to play guitar and sing. And I started from there, and I took 3 guitar lessons, and my ear became my best teacher. And I was in a band, and I was a solo artist. I went off by myself and did a solo artist. My first solo CD, I played drums, bass, guitar, and sang.
Wow.
So I'm like a little bit in everything in my head. But yeah, I mean, it was a struggle. I mean, these days, when I was really trying to push to get a record deal from like a major label, was like when like all the record companies were merging and Napster came out. You got to be a guarantee that you're going to make money. These record companies are, back in the old days, they would do a development deal and throw $100, $200, $300,000 at you to see what you can do. But they weren't doing that anymore. I mean, they just want these little, 15-year-old, 16-year-old Justin Biebers that they can, make, their $1 million or something like that. Or if you get on The Voice or something like that, and I actually fucking, I tried out for The Voice and got a call back one time, but I realized that people were in the waiting room with me. Like, they were actually reaching out to people that have some success already to come on the show, and they didn't even ask to be on the show. And I'm like, as if this is not even hard enough. Yeah. And I'm even singing someone else's songs. I'm like, I don't want to. I have more dignity than that. Like, I sing my own music, I write my own music. So, I think it'd be really beneficial if they had like a contest show for musicians that actually wrote their own music and have them compete on TV.
Yeah.
Playing their own music.
With original stuff to see. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Instead of singing a hit that's already been a hit from someone else. That
karaoke.
Yeah, glorified karaoke. The whole the writing as well, because I'm a writer, and the music industry has changed in the sense that it's become less about the talent and the art and more about how much money other people can make off of people making that talent and like that music and that art.
I agree. It's more of like a Broadway show. It's more about acting, but it takes away the validity and the real soul of like people singing music, and that's why you have a lot of fabricated music that's out these days. I mean, like, bands like me when Pearl Jam, like, they were singing about real stuff. I mean, think about that. I mean, everyone wanted to wear plaid shirts and like short jeans and just looking like a bum. It was so real, though. I mean, obviously it got like exploited, but it was so real. I mean, I don't even listen to rap, and even the 90s rap, it had substance, but now everyone's just talking about partying and drugs and just like, materialistic garbage that has no substance.
Well, rap came about because people were living in ghettos and were poor and uneducated and couldn't see a way out. Right? That's where the
best art comes out, when we're struggling.
Right? Like, it was the struggle. Now it's just all about, I made a video on YouTube, I'm famous now.
Yep.
I look good. So it is. I definitely see your struggle. Like, I definitely hear that. It's disappointing because it's like, what's going to happen to the industry? Are we not going to get music? Are we not going to have this like soul music that touches us, that reaches us? Because I haven't really been reached by any Justin Bieber songs.
And she's Canadian.
But I haven't really listened to any. But it doesn't touch me like the way a Rolling Stones song or like a Zeppelin song, or you know what I mean, like a Pearl Jam or Nirvana, or like I'm a teen of the 90s too, right? So that was like the good. I think that was the last of the good stuff.
I mean, I guess it makes it sound old. We're talking like, the old days, but I'm just like, I appreciate when I was younger, like the 70s, the 60s, like the 80s. I love 80s too. Like all of it's great. But now it's just like, to me, I can't even listen to the radio. I got to listen to my iPod. Forget it. Yeah. Like, it's done, dude. Unless you listen to Sirius Radio where you can actually choose the genre, then it's like, forget it. I mean, normal mainstream like radio. I mean, and you know what actually happens is a lot of these record companies, they pay for like what I call airwave real estate, where they'll throw hundreds of thousands of dollars to these radio stations where it's literally these songs keep playing over and over again, where it's just like hammered into our brains, and it's just really irritating, especially if you don't like it.
Well, I don't listen to any of the radio. I have Sirius, so that's what I listen to. And I make my own playlists on Google Music. So what are your plans for your music career now? So what direction are you heading with that?
Well, I mean, like, it did take a little back seat when I really got involved in the paranormal. Like, I mean, like, it's really tough, me being a solo artist. But right now, I mean, obviously being on the TV show, I'm trying to cross market the two. You know, my last EP, I did Shapeshifter. It's the same cover that's on my book, Shadow Chaser. It's kind of like a mini soundtrack to my book because I wrote about things that were involved in the book.
That's
Actually,
totally cool.
the song in my CD Shapeshifter, the song Shapeshifter, I wrote about when I was oppressed by an evil spirit, and what it really is about is taking on any obstacle or that comes your way in your life that could take any shape or form, whether it be an evil spirit or anything, and we have a chance to win and overcome it. By believing yourself, no matter how hard it is, and that's really what that song's about. And it was, obviously that was a mini soundtrack, and this new CD is the same thing. It's going to be a little bits and pieces of what I was going through these times in my book. So my new EP is going to be called 4C, which is one of my tracks on my CD, and it's going to have the same cover on my EP as my second book when I come out. But I'm really excited to get this cover made because I actually have a really cool idea for the cover. I'm going to be standing in like this haunted room, and I'm going to have my hand up on a mirror. There's no one with me, but in the reflection, a woman's arms are around me.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah. And that is so cool that you write these books and then you make this music and they correlate.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great concept. That's so neat. Don't you think, Marie?
Yeah.
I'm blown away. I'm just completely enamored right now. I
told you.
I mean, that spirit said accolades, and I second that, like, to the 10th degree. You are phenomenal.
Yeah, I told you.
Oh, thank you.
I told her this. And she was like, yeah, okay. And then I told you. I was like, you're going to be blown away.
Yeah, I get really deep into the spiritual side of things. It's not just like, okay, I hear noises and stuff, because I've experienced so much deep spiritual stuff. Like, I'm so in that spiritual side. It's not just like little bits and pieces of evidence. Like, because I'm like sensitive in the psychic experiences. I've had outer body experiences. I wrote a whole chapter about astral projection in my book, Shadow Chaser, because I've had crazy experiences like that. I mean, I've talked about that story too, which is one of the craziest outer body experiences I ever had. I was out of my body, and I was floating through church, and I saw my 8 or 10-year-old self standing at the pew with my dad. My dad had big sideburns. It looked like it was in the 80s. I could hear the church music. It was so vivid. And as soon as I got close to myself, I saw myself look at me. I looked at it. We were looking at each other from a different age perspective, and I heard this echoing voice come over like my consciousness, and it said, Sean, you're going back too far. You need to go back. And I just felt this like centrifugal force pulling me back into my body, and I was humming the church music when I woke up.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I mean, I've had so many crazy things, so I'm really deep into that like spiritual side. So that's why like these experiences are really like on that other plane, so to speak. But that's why I enjoy it, because it's just, again, it's endlessly fascinating. There's so many things that can happen on that wavelength for me, and
but you have to be careful with astral projection. I've always been taught, because you leave your body and you leave it open. If you leave it open,
well, there's something that I say just in case it ever happens. I've never done it on purpose. It's just happened to me. It hasn't happened to me in a while, but I would always say at night, I am surrounded by the white light of Jesus Christ, and with his light, I am protected and safe from harm. I'll say it 3 times for Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's something that I researched that you can say, because if you ever bounce out of your body and you have this experience, at least you'll be protected. But the way I look at it is that if I'm having this experience, God wants me to have the experience. Yeah. And if I'm having it, I want to attain the knowledge from that experience as well. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to fear it. So it's happening. So, all right, I want to soak it up and realize how I can turn into something positive, how my knowledge can increase in experiences, and then share that, incorporating with trying to help people and souls along the way with whoever I encounter.
Whoever God puts in your path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And do you believe that God put these people in your path?
I believe every single person that we come in contact with in our lives is there for a reason. Again, you're talking about a perception and perspective of no conception of time. I also have a theory about deja vu, is that we have a life chart before we come here. We have a kind of a good idea of what our mission is to accomplish, to bring a brightness to our soul. And, you know, we have our free will. So it takes us off to a little bit to the right, a little bit to the right, left, and stuff like that. But at that one given moment, it's a snapshot replica to your life chart. And that's why it's recognizable to us. It's from our life chart.
Because we know that it's going to happen because we've seen it. Because we have seen it before we came.
Right.
I've read that too. I read these interesting books called The Right Use of Will. And I mean, you read a lot of books by people that say that these words came from God. So, and this is one of them. And in that book, they talk about how you choose your life before you come. What's going to happen to you, the things that you're going to experience, so that you can evolve to a higher level each time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
that's with like reincarnation. That ties into that.
And you know what's funny is that, like, I'm Catholic, but I do believe in reincarnation. You know, and I know, like, some people are like, oh, well, how could you be a Catholic? But, you know, it doesn't change my belief system in being a Catholic. I still have my faith in God, Jesus, the Blessed Mother, and stuff like that. I mean, even Jesus reincarnated when he was resurrected.
Yeah.
I just believe that there's no way our souls are capable of learning all the lessons that we're capable of learning in one life.
Yeah.
Right.
And if we only had one life for our souls to land in this physical body that we all have right now, it would be random. There's nothing random when it comes to the spirit realm. You know, I think that we all have specific lives and journeys and missions for a specific reason. And I read this whole book when I was experiencing astral projection, about astral projection. And this guy has this perception of like what's taken place because he's had so many experiences. And I really, it rings, you know, true to me, is that, you know, our souls come into these physical bodies. We have an opportunity to bring a brightness to our soul. And then when we finish, and if we accomplish that mission to be more like God, we raise our vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing so, you have the lower vibrational realm where the demonic entities are. And then you have the astral realm where all these human ghostly spirits are stuck in purgatorial states, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then you have these higher realms that keep going up. And the reason why that we keep coming back is because we want to keep raising our vibration, because every time we accomplish that mission, we have a brightness to our individual consciousness of energy and soul. We're one step closer to being more like God.
Or
and that's what we all, right, we want to be on God's level. And that's why we would all come back to get one step closer to our Creator, to be full of unconditional love and forgiveness and perfect in that light.
Yeah. Yeah, you should read the Laws of the Spirit World. It talks all about that.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
It's the same, yeah. And so that's my vein of belief is what you just described.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fascinating. But it's so deep, though. Like, it's just, you know, it's so vast and deep of a subject. You can spend all day talking about it.
Please.
I'm scared from this show. This was a scary show. This was a serious subject matter.
See, but I see it the opposite. I mean, there was a lot of things that he said that I found extremely frightening, but at the same time, very enlightening and encouraging.
Fearing anything in life is bad. And it's pretty telling to know that evil spirits feed off fear. So just put that into perspective here. Real faith is not being afraid of these things. These things cannot idealistically do to you what they want to do to you if your faith is that strong. So I get messed with, but they're not going to be able to oppress me again. I've been oppressed before. I've been in that dark place. So that's why it's just good to be informed about how they can attack, but then use your real faith to combat that. But I mean, I'm way more of a target than you guys. I've stepped in the way of, I'm an adversary to the enemy of man, the devil. I've taken souls. I believe I've freed souls that the devil has had suffering, not only in the physical form, but also like in like lost purgatorial states where these demonic entities probably had them suffering, trapped for whatever the reason. I can only speculate about to some degree. So I'm way more of a target than you guys would be, just talking about it.
Does that worry you?
No.
I've been doing this for 11 years. It started from the beginning. Like, I mean, in the beginning, I was overwhelmed and fucking terrified.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand what was happening to me. But I've had so many experiences, things come at me, like the Annabelle doll followed me home one night after the event. Like, I've had, I mean, you name it, dude. I mean, like, you know, unless I freaking woke up from my bed and like my heavy ass table like picked up and levitated, I'm not going to be scared. Like I've had some pretty crazy stuff happen. Like,
Tell
but
us
I
about
mean,
tell us about your experience with the Annabelle doll.
I was at an event that they had in a restaurant in Connecticut with my buddy Eric, who's on Ghost Loop with me, and the guy Dan, who's one of the lead investigators, for the Warrens paranormal group, New England Paranormal Research Society. God, if I say it wrong.
No.
So I was standing there next to Dan Rivera, and the lock came on loose in front of the Annabelle doll. Both of us were standing there, and he's like, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of weird." Now, mind you, being in front of that doll, I could feel the oppressive feeling in front of the doll. But we finished the event. I went home. That was Saturday night. Sunday night, now, mind you, I go to so many dark places and haunted. I don't know where these things come from. It could be from anywhere. But Sunday night, I dozed off and I saw this girl in a white nightgown, and she had black eyes and fangs and saliva coming out of her mouth going and she was floating left and right next to my bed, and then put her arms out and tried to choke me.
Oh.
And I woke up, blessed my place, and I had the chills. But so I went to Gettysburg 3-4 days later, and I'm in like the battlefield, and I'm periscoping. I told people about the vision I had. I didn't know where it came from. And out of nowhere, the spirit box said in a row, it said, "The attic, Annabelle, nightmare." And then it clicked with me, because I sleep in the attic, that it was the Annabelle thing that followed me home the next night. It all made sense.
Ah.
Because that doll killed somebody on a motorcycle back in the day, didn't it? Like the spirit.
Well, that's the that's the story.
That's the story.
And yeah, that's terrifying.
I think it was 2 people, wasn't it? The man and his girlfriend.
The girlfriend, I think, was paralyzed, if I stand correct.
Yeah, I don't know. I know. The dude died for sure, because he was the one that was saying, "Oh, I don't believe you. Come and get me. Come and get me." And he got busted and kicked out. And
yeah, he's banging on the case and saying, "You're just a bunch of bunk," or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, that's an invitation. Provoking for the sake of just getting entertained or proving a point, they're going to use that invitation as a way to attack you at any point that they want to. So, that's the danger it lies. I mean, now, for me, how I do things is that even the way that, Ralph has taught me, it's like the only way that you can provoke, you have to have a clear, genuine intent. And that intent is to help somebody, help a spirit, or help people and family that you're helping on a case. And we have to use religious provocation to force out a demonic entity, because they do not want to be recognized and known. So that's how they're forced to come out and manifest in some sort of way because of that. But if you're doing it for the intent for other reasons, and you're in a demonic entity, they're going to use that as an invitation. It's just like the Conjuring 3 that's going to be coming out. That's based on another story, The Devil in Connecticut. The little boy who was crazy possessed, and actually that chair, the Devil's Chair, is in Zach Bagans' museum. Really awesome exhibit. They have audio from the exorcism, but I think it's his uncle. The guy who he provoked the thing. Don't do it to him. Come into me. And then he went and killed his landlord. And it was the first time ever that the Warrens went into a court case to try to tell the judge that he was possessed by the devil, and that's why he had killed his landlord. They were trying to save him, because right after he provoked that thing, they believed it possessed him, and that's what that movie's about. But that's just another example of how you can never challenge a demon. It's going to use that against you. It will do exactly what you want it to do. So you have to be really seriously careful.
So what do you do if you think that you are being visited by a demon, or if you see a shadow, or what? Do you just be go away, fuck off? What do you say?
I even look back to what Ed Warren said in The Demonologist. He would say for kids, if you see something scary, you say, in the name of God, or in the name of Jesus Christ, how can I help you? And if it has any ill intent, it should leave. Now, if you're being oppressed, that's why it's so important to be objective about some of your emotions. If you truly believe that you shouldn't be that angry, depressed, or down and out, you got to take a step back and, figure out if there's a third person perspective that's influencing you, because that's what they can do. They can literally make you receptive to thoughts and emotions of any sort of negative experience a human being can have emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and physically. So that's just the important element, knowing that something is capable of doing that to you and not let it get to the point where it's of no return, where you could end up hurting yourself severely or somebody else.
Do you ever have, when you go to a place that's supposedly haunted, or like Gettysburg or someplace that's something, do you have any residuals after you leave? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel unhappy? Do you ever...
You know, it's funny you should say that, because like my buddy and I visited this place I wrote about in my book. This place is super, super haunted. Ghost Adventure, actually been there years ago. The place is so haunted. We went there, my buddy Eric, and I was periscoping light. It was really dark and freaky. And like for 4 or 5 days later, like I felt like very lackadaisic, and like I started to hear like satanic telepathic like words and stuff. I'm like, no. I did a serious blessing and cleansing of myself and blessed my place. And like the next day I felt like $1 million. I'm like, no. That's not happening to me. I've been oppressed, so I can recognize it immediately. But other people that are not informed of that and I don't know about how they can do that to you, they kind of just ride the dark wave, and they allow these things to thrive and extract energy from you as you're suffering in all those aspects.
Yeah, well, I only asked because it happened to me. Because I went and did an investigation. We had a serial killer here who lived on a farm. It's very close to me, very close.
Oh, he's probably familiar with the case.
And Robert Picton. And so we went and did, I took a friend who's a sensitive with me just to see, and she was telling me where things were. And afterwards we left, and I was depressed for days. Remember, Marie?
I do.
And I was like, okay, yeah, I have to go do something because this is just having this effect. So it's, yeah, that's why I asked if it happened to you, because it happened to me.
Oh, yeah, no, it can happen going to any place, and even me, too. I mean, going to these places where there's so much suffering, I mean, it kind of latch onto you. And these places, those types of places are the ones that fascinate me the most. Mm-hmm. The places that literally stick to you like spiritual glue.
Yeah.
And it sticks with you for a while, man. Like, and I just noticed, too, like, Letchworth, and like I'm investigating other places, and it's saying Letchworth and all these places I'm investing in, these spirits come and follow you like everywhere. It's just crazy. But again, like I went there in that place and I prayed for a spirit to cross over and got confirmation of it. And of course something wasn't happy about that. So, that's why these things, kind of, they'll make a vendetta a little bit more profound in nature if you piss them off in that way rather than just walking around. So, but,
and like, so. Yeah, and you have this huge target on your back.
I mean, that's fine. I've been doing this long. A lot of the places that I go, I mean, they always reference my pendant too. I have a Blessed Saint Michael pendant. It's been touched by Ralph's relic of the true cross that Jesus was crucified on. Anything it touches is considered a third-class relic, and they reference it all the time. It says pendant, he's protected. He even said it on the show. But that was cut out in one of the episodes. It says it a lot, and it just gives more, confirmation of my faith. When there's spirits referencing that I'm protected, then, it's just like, all right, well, why would they be saying that? It'll say St. Michael watches him. Like, it happens all the time on my scopes live in front of thousands of people. And that's why I love using Periscope, because these people witness this stuff. And even my first book, I tell them all the time, like, you guys were witnesses with me with a lot of these experiences I was going through. You guys were watching this stuff and be judges for yourself. And you're part of like my first book. And there's chunks of my second book too, that people were there. There were, during these investigations that I'm writing about my book.
You just did an investigation with our friend Jimmy.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy's great.
Oh, I love Jimmy.
He just showed up. We were doing a little scope at the famous Union Cemetery with Ed Warren. That was his favorite local cemetery, where he caught the lady in white on video. But Jimmy used to work with the Warrens. Jimmy's great. He's hilarious.
He really
and he's
is.
been around for a long time. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, he's lovely.
All right, so for people that want to get a copy of your book, and is your first CD, is that available as well?
Yeah, so if you're out of the U.S., all my last CD and a couple of my last CDs before that are on iTunes and Amazon and all that stuff. And if you live in the U.S., you can get signed CDs and books from me from my website, SeanDAustin.com.
And that's D.
And I'll mail them out. Yes, SEAN, D as in David, Austin as in AustinTexas.com.
Gotcha. And then Ghost Loop airs every Friday night on the Travel Channel.
10 p.m., 9 Central, and for the next 3 Fridays, we have 3 episodes left.
Yes, as of the date of this recording, which is Sunday, January 26th. Yeah, and I've seen all 5 of the episodes that are available now. And like we didn't get into a lot of the Ghost Loop practices, but that's really because I wanted to get to. I really wanted to just focus on you. But I did mention in the intro that, and this is just for the listeners out there that haven't watched Ghost Loop, it's worth a watch because they don't do things the way that most of these ghost hunter shows do things, if that makes sense. And I don't want to give too much away. I just want you to at least check out one episode, see what you think.
Yeah, definitely watch the show. It's a great show, and Sean's great in it. They definitely do things differently.
Yeah, it's not your typical, oh, we got a EVP and now we're bouncing. No, these guys mean business, especially Sean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough, Sean, for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been truly an honor.
No problem.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
So because of the nature of the topic on our show and Kari's fear of the paranormal,
not fear, trepidation.
I do say a prayer of protection at the end of the show, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. So, Sean,
Amen.
Thank you again. I'm definitely getting your book and your CD because you have blown my mind more than any guest I think that I've ever spoken to in the 6 years I've been doing this. So,
wow, thank you.
Yeah,
I told you.
Thank you. And everybody, I think you should also pick up his book because this guy knows what he's talking about.
And his CD, because he's got a lovely voice. He's got a very deep, rich, mellow voice. The Last Kiss cover that you do is absolutely beautiful. So definitely give that a listen to.
Alrighty. And until the next episode, stay scared.